Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, what does Israel-Hamas war mean for end times? Were these events foretold in prophecy? And what did Jesus actually say about the signs of the end? Well, we're going to talk about that and a little bit more, so keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. Buy your guns while you can, while the Second Amendment is still a thing.
This episode brought to you by preppers.com.
Boogaloo. Hey, what is happening?
Hey guys, what's up, Dre?
I'm Andre, and you can come at me at my Instagram at SuperDre. Matt, what's up, man?
Man, I trying to figure out what's happening in the world, man. My son came in asking me the same kind of questions. He's like, oh, what's going on, Dad? And it's not a simple answer, right? So, it makes just as much sense for us to address it here and maybe kind of tie this into the backside of our other show. Brian, what do you think? Is the world almost over? Are we post-trib or pre-trib or what's happening?
Like, are the events that are ensuing right now, are they confirmation of a certain view?
Yeah. Can I cash out my 401?
I wouldn't do that.
Oh, okay.
Damn
it.
I mean, there might be reasons to do that, but they're not
eschatological. Not eschatological.
Right.
Is that the word?
Eschatological.
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 I've been meaning to look up the etymology of that because I think it's
a weird word.
Well, it's related to, like, when you talk about scatology, you're talking about
getting out of
poop.
here.
Talking about poop.
That's kind of what comes to mind when I hear the word scat.
Like, and I think
that's what I'm thinking of.
I think there's a commonality there. This is not what I was planning to talk about. It just came to mind.
And yet here we are.
Yeah. But like, it's about the, endings. It's just an unfortunate, now I want to look it up.
Yeah, but
Jamie,
you should look it up.
Our last show got the most attention of anything we've had on YouTube so far. It got the most engagement. It got actual comments.
We got comments.
It got a guy accusing Matt and I of being basically Kanye West. And I'll go ahead and let Matt address
in
that.
What regard?
Israel hate. So
you're geniuses. Was he saying you're geniuses?
I got a dope life and I do dope shit.
Yeah. Matt, you have an answer for my man?
I do.
Genius.
So, I mean, I did make a response on YouTube. I tried to at the individual, but it wouldn't at. Like, it wasn't hot.
I think you replied, though. I think it did go to him.
I went in the reply, but it didn't do the at. So I don't know if he gets the message in his dashboard or not. But what I said, and I'm not going to reread my answer, but I said I can definitely see how the tone that I took specifically might have sounded anti-Israel. That definitely wasn't my intent. So I will say, for the sake of clarity, I am not anti-Israel, neither the people nor the country. What I was attempting to do is just be critical and, take an alternate opinion for the sake of the conversation, try to drive out some of the different thoughts. For those that are new to the show, that's kind of what we try to do. If you go back and listen to some of our other stuff, like around the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, some of those conversations, we try to get into some really touchy, icky stuff because we think, maybe there's not enough people that are willing to have these conversations in their own circles. So that's the hope. Hopefully if any of our Jewish listeners were listening, they didn't take it the wrong way. I wouldn't say I'm anti Arab either. I live in a world where I don't believe in zero-sum situations. So hopefully at least take my response with the spirit that I offer it. But I appreciate you having the comment. I'm not being, I don't feel attacked or I'm not being defensive about it because engagement's really what we're looking for. So, if nothing else, I hope my alternative point of view at least allowed you to kick around your own ideas, maybe reinforce your own ideas. But one thing we try not to do is be an echo chamber here. So I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, and I told him basically when I replied to him, hey, we invite this exact thing. You can have as much criticism for us as, I mean, we have thick skin and we're all veterans, so we're a little dead inside anyway. But
that last part was true, but the rest of it doesn't apply to me because
you don't have thick skin. Oh, just because he agreed with you.
I think
he was the good guy in this. So
he recognized which of us was right.
But yeah, and he actually, I invited him to, give us another chance or, listen to another episode. And he said he'd do it. So
I did see that. And I appreciate that. Like we definitely don't tune into one and then say like, oh, what the heck's going on here? Because,
those guys,
we might surprise you with our takes on some other things in a way that you enjoy.
And for another, my favorite comment, hi, Corey. I have a list. and the list is long, and this isn't even the half of it. But since
it's long and distinguished,
since that's not what we're talking about today, I'm not gonna read the list. But you're invited to hit me up in DMs. I'll talk about it, or you can go on the Facebook group page and maybe bring it up, and we can have a discussion, and Brian can argue. We can get,
or maybe you read those off in a short. And we can post it separately as a short, so maybe it's not part of the show. Yeah.
Well, I want to get in on that. So just to remind the listeners, tell them what the list is.
The list had to do with injustices that had to do with ethnic and racial issues that happen on the border of Gaza, West Bank, and Israel.
If just to clarify, I think in the context it was. Your claim was that they had racist policies. I disputed that they had racist policies. I was attributing not that they have policies that are necessarily pleasant for Palestinians, but that it's the motivation that I was pushing back on. And so
I don't actually, we'd have to pull the tape back, but I don't remember the argument being about policies. It was about activities.
It was about execution of policies.
Right. I don't think any of us suggested that there were racist policies. I think we were suggesting that.
In fact, that was my pushback. Yes, there are policies that are supposed to be anti-racist, and they're not following through on them. And I compared it to Jim Crow era in America.
Yeah, and my point was, I mean, I don't want to get hung up on the word policy, but just that it was motivated by racism and not by self-preservation.
Okay. I'll let you have the last word on that.
We will. I mean, that was the setup for the round 2 on that, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
What are we here to talk about?
End times.
And
are we in end times right now?
Specifically, I'm thinking of all the memes and the social media posts that since all this stuff started happening, people have been is this the end times? Does this mean the Jesus is coming back soon? My social media feeds are flooded with that stuff. I keep getting Greg Laurie sermons in my YouTube feed. You guys know who Greg Laurie is?
Nope.
Anyway, he's a popular evangelical preacher. So I thought we'd dive into that, set the record straight. So what do you guys think? Do you think we're in the end times?
I think that I have no idea, because I have personally, not as a academic curiosity, but spiritually, I have zero interest in trying to predict it. I take the verse of no man knows the day of my coming quite literally. And I also, we're all the same generation. We're with a couple of years of each other's age. Spent my entire childhood listening to Southern Baptist preachers use every single event, both technological and geopolitical, as the single most obvious harbinger of the end times, right? So I remember back to the Cold War was going to be end times, right? It was because of the whole fire allegory or whatever you want to call it. It was that, that's nuclear weapons. And then in the 80s, AIDS came out. And then that, because apparently it burned when you pee or whatever a connection they made. That's the fire. It's a bug. It's a virus. It's this is the way God's going to kill us all. And then it was
acid rain.
Then acid rain. Then it was, what was the other? There was more and more. It was Y2K as we got into, later eras. Oh, the barcodes. When barcodes became a real big standardization, there was the big push that people were going to be forced to get barcoded on their skin or a computer chip, and that's the mark of the beast, and that's the end times. And then it was Y2K, then it was the Mayan calendar, then it was, now it's AI, now it's this war and this conflict in Israel. But it's always 9/11 was another one, right? Because of that.
Didn't we just go through the rapture?
The fake thing about the what was the guy's name? The French prophet, or not prophet, but the I can't remember now. But all those things I just rattled off.
Nostradamus.
Right? Nostradamus, thank you.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things. It's always end times. I feel like Men in Black, right? It's always a galactic invasion. It's always there's always something going on, and every single time it's been, there's been the guys on the street with the big sign, the end is near, right? It just gets tiring, and I don't know what you do with that if you really buy into it and then it doesn't happen. To me, that's got to be the worst feeling, tribulation interruptus. Like, I don't know what you call that, but it's got to be a pretty feels bad moment for all the evangelicals out there. So I guess this really another one of the things that I loved about Dr. Heiser. He was so anti-eschatology. It amused me every time I saw one of his little quips on it. Right.
Yeah, I disagree.
That's just kind of, that's fine. I'm with him. Like, it makes my head hurt, and I don't know what to make of it.
But I do have good news for you.
Okay, lay it on me.
We're going to clear all of that up today.
Okay.
Not to overpromise, but
that's quite the promise.
I just think it becomes an excuse for people to stop living and stop doing things that they should be doing every day. And I think if you live your life of gratitude and hug the people you care about and come on and speak to friends even though they're far away, then when the end times come, it won't matter. Like, it is like you're going to be locked into whatever it is that's going to happen after, and hopefully you did what you were supposed to do to get to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think as we get into this, I think it's even worse than that. I think it's I don't think this is all that complicated. I think if people would just read it, it isn't. I'm not saying it's immediately obvious, but it's not that hard to figure out. I think people are largely blinded by tribe and tradition and dogmatism, and they kind of bring their expectations to it, and they don't, instead of just reading it. So
it's like a weird narcissism where you want to be the one, like I want to be the one to usher in the new times. Is that how it's gonna be when Jesus comes back?
My day.
See, I think there's a certain humility to it. For some people, like, you're just kind of trusting your preacher, and I think a lot of it's groupthink.
Oh, I don't think he meant the people. I think Dre meant the preachers. Isn't that what
well, yeah, the people who,
yeah, pretty much anyone claiming that this is it, and because they know.
I'm such a genius, I can deduce from the subtext within this document, and then I'm going to lay it against what's happening today and show you exactly. Now come to my church and put money on my offering plate.
Well, yeah, it's sensationalist. It gets attention, which is what we're doing here. But
yeah, because if the world's ending tomorrow, why am I putting money in your plate, dog?
Right. Yeah, but why not?
But why not?
You gotta get right with the Lord before he comes back. And I, as someone who speaks for him, give me money.
Right.
But so I thought we'd just read it and kind of see what it says.
Are you gonna go in synoptic order? Because I think it's kind of cool how if you go from Mark to Matthew to Luke, how it actually kind of escalates. Like if Mark is the teaser trailer, then Matthew will pop up with like a bigger, better, but then Luke has more of a promise feel good ending, even though it's a bad ending.
Well, there are, well, it's, except that's the thing. It's not, that's a, we talked about that in one of our earlier
We
podcasts,
did.
how we talk about how the, the apocalypse, it's the end of the world. It's scary. We're all gonna suffer and die. And, we're gonna have to fight the Antichrist and be afraid of the devil. And no, it's held out as something, it's the central hope of Christianity, is for the Messiah to return and set up God's kingdom on earth. But we're so preoccupied with this notion of individual salvation to an afterlife as a disembodied spirit that we don't really, I think we've lost the plot, and I think that's going to become apparent here. So, but yeah, there are differences between the synoptics. Some are, they're not all, so most of them are kind of subtle. And so I can kind of understand some of the confusion about it. But anyway, it's enough build up. I'm going to look at Mark, because it's kind of it's purportedly the earliest. So, and I'm not going to read through everything line by line, but just the salient points. So Jesus is leaving the temple. They're admiring it. Jesus says, "Do you see all these great buildings?" Replied Jesus, "Not one stone here would be left on another. Every one would be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what would be the sign that they are about to be filled?" So right there from the outset, there's no particular reason to think of this as being about the end times. They're talking about the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. So they ask him, "When will this be?" And that's when he says, "Watch out that no one deceives you," which is, that's the first thing we should pay attention to today. "Many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are but the beginning of birth pains." So, all of these wars and natural events that happen, and everybody scrambling to predicting the end, Jesus says, don't be alarmed. These are business as usual. These things are going to happen. That's just the default setting of human history. And again, he's not even talking about the end times here. He's talking about the fall of the temple. And so he goes on to tell them to be on guard against persecution. You're going to be arrested, taken before governors and synagogues. Brother will betray brother to death, parents their children. When you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Now that's a note from Mark himself, telling the reader of his gospel to understand. And the language there, it's a direct quotation from the book of Daniel. And this is in where he predicted this was when the temple was in ruins after the Babylonian exile, and he predicted yet another defilement of the temple. And so that's something to put a pin in for later, because we're going to get into that. But Jesus goes on to say, and again, he's still talking about the destruction of the temple, not the end of not his, what we call the second coming. They had no concept of a second coming at the time, because they were still waiting for his first parousia, his first advent. But he, at that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "Look, there he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. But in those days, following that distress, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky. He's quoting Joel here. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory, and he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds and from the ends of the earth. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, for you don't know when that time will come. If the man knew when the thief was going to break in, he would have stayed on watch. So a lot of people read that and think that he's conflating the coming of the Son of Man with the destruction of the temple, which happened about 40 years later in the year 70 AD. I think it's pretty clear from the text that he's taking great pains to disabuse them of that idea. He tells them these are the signs to look for to know that the fall of the temple and of Jerusalem is about to happen. Learn this lesson from the fig tree. So he's telling them to keep alert and they'll know that's coming. But then in contrast, about that day and hour, no one knows. Like he's explicitly distinguishing between when the temple falls, and at that time there'll be all these people saying the Messiah is coming, or there's a prophet over here predicting the Messiah is coming, or that prophet. He's telling them, well, no, you won't have to suss it out. It's not going to be something that is going to require your discernment or your reading the tea leaves, because it's gonna be unmistakable when the Son of Man comes. The whole world will see it. There won't be any debate. So when the temple's about to be destroyed, though, there's going to be all these false messiahs and false prophets claiming to be the one, and it's so he's excuse me. So he's explicitly distinguishing between those two events. I mean, it's just like Matt said at the beginning, no one knows the day or out.
So it's funny, as you've read all that, I just saw a second part of that sentence that I never noticed. So it says, about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son.
Right.
Only the Father.
He's like, shit, I don't know.
Jesus is like, I don't know. It could be a couple of years. Might be a long time. I don't know.
It reminds me of How I Met Your Mother, when he lost the slap bet. And every time he walks in, he's like, and that's us every time that there's some kind of war or wannabe cataclysm happening on Earth. Is this it? Is this it?
That's a great episode. It was a series of episodes, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's what made it great.
Ongoing bit.
Yeah, that was so funny.
There's nothing funnier than watching a grown man slap another grown man,
and the one flinching about it too, and knowing it's coming and he can't do anything
except for that one time.
I do appreciate a grown man that gets slapped and gets up immediately and fights. Most don't. They cower and they ball up in a little fetal position.
Well, to be fair to those men, I don't think he could bench press 500 pounds when it happened to the one guy you're talking about.
Well, I mean, it's true.
I think he would have done the same thing, but
no, I don't think so. I think he would have fought. I think he has the warrior spirit. And
no, I said he definitely would have done the same thing, is what I said.
Oh, okay, good.
I mean, there would have been, but I mean, there probably would have been more broken than the clock. But anyway, what's the subtle difference between the synoptics here?
Please don't read them all, though. That was long.
I'm not planning to. That was about as much line by line verbatim reading as I'm planning to do.
And real quick question to the listeners: if we ever do a long verse like that, would you guys prefer that we put it on screen for anybody who's watching? Is that helpful? I don't know. Just let us know in the comments. It's just a thought I had. I jotted it.
I was grappling with whether to read it from the book or to read it from the screen.
Right. Well, I'm not on the book, but I'm saying a slide.
We could put it on the screen,
text on it. Yeah. So anybody who's on YouTube watching, it could be reading along with your words rather than.
Maybe we'll just add some text on the screen so they could just read it and it'll be
right. If we close caption, it'll just come across and
we can follow the bouncing ball.
They could probably just go to Bible Gateway and plug in.
Or we could do it like picture pages style. And you could draw underlines, like Bill Cosby.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that show's canceled.
I'm pretty sure that show was canceled a long
I
time ago.
I don't think he's doing it anymore. He ain't selling pudding pops either.
Funny story. When I was a little kid and Picture Pages was out, I had my mom order me Picture Pages. And so I got some and I was all excited. I'm like, I got Picture Pages. And then I had him and he did his and I was like following along and I had a meltdown. I was like 4 because my pen didn't make noises when I drew lines on it like it did on the show. And I didn't understand that was a special effect. And
That's the whole reason you wanted to do it.
Why wouldn't you?
Right. It made awesome sounds.
You thought your mom was the coolest ever for actually ordering you the awesome sound pen.
I was like,
you thought I got a bullshit one, Mom.
I live a charmed life. I got Picture Pages. I'm playing along with Bill Cosby because he's gonna do some Picture Pages with me. And then they didn't make any noise and I was done. And I think I was done with Picture Pages at that point. I was like, take these Picture Pages.
Okay. You tell Bill I said have a Coke and a smile and shut the fuck up. Jello pudding mother.
So Matthew 24, to abruptly and artlessly bring it back to the topic. You asked about the subtle differences. In Matthew 24, it comes after after the 7 woes, where he's basically warning the Jewish leadership that they're in trouble. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, your house is left to you desolate. So in response to that, his disciples are like, what are you talking about? Well, look at this awesome temple. And then that's when he says, I tell you the truth, not one stone to be left here on another. And then the questions they ask him are somewhat different.
It's like the director's cut version.
Kind of, yeah.
The Dan Snyder version of
Well, it's definitely more elaborate, and I think he puts a finer point on the distinction. But they ask him, when will this happen? What will be the sign of your? It's translated coming, but the Greek is parousia, which means a visitation. And what will be this? When will this happen? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So he makes it more emphatic by, after the text that you get from Mark sort of getting a more elaborate version, he tells these parables about the bridesmaids who weren't ready, and about the sheep and the goats, and the point of it is that be ready all the time, because it could happen at any time, as opposed to the fall of the temple, which you're going to see coming. There's going to be definite signs so that you'll know that it's there and you can flee Jerusalem. But he includes an important detail that is often missed, and especially in these conversations about end times. Matthew 24, verse 9 through 14, he's kind of talking about how they'll be persecuted, and he says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So that's the one sign he gives to know that the actual end will come. Which is, it's not really a sign, it's something we're supposed to be doing. Like, that's what it means to be ready, to be as a church preaching this gospel of the kingdom, which, as we've discussed, we don't even really know what this gospel of the kingdom is. We tell people about going to heaven when they die, and we speak of this world as something to be abandoned and escaped in favor of some other world, when it's about the renewal of this earth through the preaching of the gospel. And so, you all right, Matt?
Yeah, I'm picking up noise from somewhere.
Should I wait till you're finished or keep going?
It's fine. Keep going.
So the bottom line here is, if somebody thinks there are signs that you can interpret to know that Jesus is about to come back, they're wrong. No, absolutely nobody knows. Anyone who claims to read the Bible and to have studied the prophecies and have identified the signs that Jesus is about to return is just proving by that they haven't read the Bible. They haven't paid attention to the Olivet Discourse. And it obscures the all-important, crucial aspect of what the church is supposed to be doing, which is to preach the gospel of the kingdom to all nations. But Luke 21 is,
Yeah, that's like if that was the director's cut, then this is like a, I don't know, like a spin-off to keep the series fresh. I don't know.
well, in Luke, he does kind of conflate them. Like reading along,
Right.
you can't really, you don't have that explicit distinction between here are the signs to look for the temple and when Jesus returns. Now, if you read the other two, it's not impossible to reconcile them. But if somebody is just going off of this, it's completely understandable why reasonable people of good faith could take Luke 21 to mean that. But you do have kind of the same feature of, hold on a second. Yeah, no, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to get around that. It pretty much says, well, there's the one thing is that he says they will fall by the sword and be taken as prison. This is verse 24. They will fall by the sword and be taken as prisoners to all nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So there is this sort of indefinite period of time alluded to that would, if you read that alongside the other two, it would indicate that the fall of Jerusalem is not the end of the world, but it's the next step toward this indeterminate period of time called the time of the Gentiles, when the Gentiles trample on Jerusalem, which happens.
It's a bad time to be pregnant, apparently.
Yeah. But again,
that's a really weird sentence.
What are the pregnant women in?
Yeah, Luke 21. Luke 21, 23. It just randomly says how dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers.
Well, it's hard to run.
And there was giants. it's like this really weird little statement. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't know that there's a great time to be a pregnant woman or a nursing mother, but like it'll be especially bad during that time.
When Romans are coming to destroy your home, that's
bad time to be fat.
Look, I saw Apocalypto, and she was a badass in that hole.
And she was pregnant the whole time.
Kick that baby out and still whoop some ass.
Huh.
And like kept the baby quiet so they didn't find and kill her. What an incredible movie by speaking of resident anti-Semite, Mel Gibson as the director of that film.
I've been meaning to review that. I didn't get good reviews, but I mean review it like rewatch it.
Oh,
I don't mean write a review, but
it's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever watched it.
You probably just don't want to read the subtitles.
That is part of it.
And it's long.
Yeah, why can't they just speak American so we can follow the story?
It's not immersive enough.
Yeah.
That is what a colonizer would say.
Yeah. Guilty as charged.
That's why I like my Kevin Costner movies. He doesn't even do an accent.
He's like, I'm Robin of Locksley.
Hey, y'all.
I know everybody's got a British accent but me. I'm like, nice.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of the Luke 21 problem?
What's the problem? That it conflates them?
Yeah.
I think it gets reconciled with other gospels.
How do you mean?
I mean that it's super distinctive in the other two, and if you read them as if they're one, then it separates them.
It is weird that it puts them side by side, in fairness. Like there's not a hard stop. It's like the temple, Jerusalem, and then the end of the world. Like there's no time in between. And it makes it seem as if chronologically the two events are going to be juxtaposed. Right?
Yeah. So does that inform, I don't know, Paul's urgency when he's speaking about end times?
I think his urgency is the same as everybody else's. You don't know when it's going to happen.
But does he believe it's going to be sooner than people of his contemporaries?
I think the early church believed it would happen within their lifetime. I think that was pretty universal. Although you have things like Second Peter, where he talks about how in the last days scoffers will come, scoffing and following their evil desires. They will say, "Where is this coming he promised?" Ever since the days of our ancestors, the world goes on, and this.
I guess my question is: do you think that Luke was informed by that mentality from Paul, and that's why he kind of, scrunched them?
I mean, I take him at his word in his prologue that he interviewed eyewitnesses and got it from people who heard Jesus. Now,
that's a really weird way of saying yes.
I'm not saying yes.
It's the way he said no to me, because he's saying that Paul didn't inform him that it was the eyewitness testimony of the people that he interviewed.
Well, but I don't accept that. What I think is the premise of your question, that Paul had kind of a unique view on this. I mean, I think if you take the Olivet Discourse, he is saying it could happen.
Right?
Yeah, Paul was not an eyewitness.
So he does have a unique view of it. It's different than the other gospels because they were there when it happened.
That assumes he had a view that was independent of them, though. I mean, there's good indication from his letters that he was getting his information about Jesus' teachings from the apostles, from the 12.
Also, that he was getting teachings directly from Christ.
Yeah, but not on an ongoing basis. I mean, he had the Damascus Road experience, and he had some visions here and there, but it's not like he was like hanging out in a room having Jesus preach sermons to him. I don't think that's ever claimed anywhere. I mean, he never claimed to be a prophet in that sense. He claimed to be an apostle, but one abnormally born. His claim to apostleship was the Damascus Road experience. But no, he didn't claim that he was getting special teachings from Jesus that was special to him.
He didn't?
Did he? Where did he claim that?
I mean, I don't have it off the top of my head, and I didn't think that we were going to go down this.
Are you talking about Galatians? This might.
I'm just saying that he said that he got things that weren't from apostles. Did he not?
No, I don't think
I thought he did.
No,
I thought he made some like mystical statement about, I get these from.
He said, "What my gospel isn't from the other apostles, so
right.
don't at me, bro."
I think you're talking about Galatians, where he says,
because he says, like, I wasn't there, but it was revealed to me, or something like that.
I want you to know, brothers, that the gospel I preach is not of human origin. I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it. Rather, I received it by revelation from Jesus Christ. For you've heard of my previous way of life in Judaism. Sorry, my computer's acting up.
Sure, that one.
But yeah, I persecuted the church. I was advancing in Judaism. I was super zealous. But when God, who set me apart from my mother's womb, called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his son in me so that I might preach him among the Gentiles, my immediate response was not to consult any human being. I did not go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before I was, but went into Arabia. Later, I returned to Damascus. But then he talks about how after 3 years, he did go to Jerusalem to get acquainted. And the Greek there is historia. It's related. It's the root for our word history. So it's basically, he interviewed Cephas, Peter, stayed with him 15 days. He saw none of the other apostles, only James, the Lord's brother. He's not saying that the content of his gospel is special. He's saying that his apostleship, his authority to preach the gospel came directly from Jesus Christ. And the gospel.
No, he said the revelations came.
Right.
He's saying that his
I think he is saying his gospel is special.
Yeah.
Because he refers it to as his gospel.
Yeah.
A lot.
Okay. Well, then we need to read on, because that's not what he said there. He was, I mean, he's obviously
exactly what he
talking
said
about,
there.
Right.
Go back up to the top. Don't keep on reading because you're getting into different territory. Go back and reread the first part of that.
I want you to know, brothers, that the gospel I preach is not of human origin.
Means I didn't get it from anybody. The gospel that I preach, not the authority, but the actual gospel I'm preaching is not from human authority.
I did not.
And throughout his letters, he uses the gospel in a proprietary manner.
My gospel.
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
Clearly here he's talking about Jesus appearing to him on the road to Damascus.
Clearly.
And telling him, go and bear witness to the nations.
And he didn't spend years in Arabia also receiving revelation?
Hold on.
So he says my gospel 15 times.
That's a lot in 7 letters.
Wait, hang on. Nope. It didn't concatenate those 2 words properly. Hang on.
Okay.
That search was a good search.
I did not go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before I was, but I went into Arabia. Later, I returned to Damascus. It doesn't say anything about getting special revelations from Jesus. It doesn't say what he was doing in Arabia, but it does say in Acts that he was learning from other disciples. But the point of it in the context of what we know from Acts was Jesus appearing to him on Damascus Road, sending him to the house of Ananias to baptize him, which he was, and then he spent some time learning from other disciples, but he wasn't getting he never says he was getting special revelations from Jesus himself. And
okay,
he was,
and I didn't bring it up to have an argument or have a theological discussion about Paul himself. It just seems to me, as reading through the New Testament, that Paul has a certain urgency about it, and it seems to me that Luke also has the same type of urgency, and as compared to the other synoptic gospels. And Luke is, acquainted with Paul, and I was just asking if perhaps there's a trail there. And if there's not, that's okay. I'm not wed to this train of thought.
So just in the NIV, he says my witness once, and he says my gospel 3 times.
Okay.
So do you think he had a different gospel?
Why are you going down a weird path?
Yeah, you are going down a weird path.
You're doing some weird defensive theological response to a statement.
But you're emphasizing him saying
I'm not emphasizing a single thing. I was, what Dre mentioned, and I agreed with, was he didn't get his gospel from man. He got it from God. He says so. To say otherwise is odd, because he says it in the open of his statement. And then he goes on to talk about things, and he went and met with Peter, but that makes no guarantee or even an inference that his gospel or any of what he preaches came from Peter. It just simply says he went and met with Peter. He already got the gospel from God, so why would he give a shit what Peter had to say?
Well, apparently he did, because he went and stayed to them.
No, apparently he didn't. Maybe they were having food. Maybe they were talking about like how to make a boat.
Before you camp out on a conclusion, I think we should finish reading that passage about when he went to Jerusalem, stayed with Cephas for 15 days. Then I went to Syria and Cilicia, and I was personally unknown to the churches of Judea that are in Christ. They only heard the report. The man who formerly persecuted us is now preaching the faith he once tried to destroy, and they praise God because of me. And then he goes on to say, then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem, this time with Barnabas. I took Titus along also. I wanted to be sure that I presented to them the gospel that I preach among the Gentiles. I wanted to be sure that I was not running and had not been running my race in vain. Yet not even Titus, who was with me, was compelled to be circumcised, even though he was a Greek. I'm sorry, I skipped a part. I went in response to a revelation, and meeting privately with those esteemed as leaders, I presented to them the gospel that I preach among the Gentiles. And so this is in Jerusalem, where James, the Lord's brother, was bishop. We don't know if Cephas was that, where Peter was there or not.
So he presented them.
He went and did a show and tell. He didn't go do a lunch and learn. Like, that's very different. He's like, this is what I've been preaching because this is what God told me to preach. Are y'all good with this? That's a very different. That's a very different action.
Very different.
Well,
than going, hey, teach me how to preach or what to preach.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he did that, but my point is, he was preaching the same thing, because he tells us he went to present it to them, to the leaders in Jerusalem, to make sure he wasn't preaching in vain. What's that mean?
Right. No, I get that, but that doesn't mean it's. I have no idea what you're trying to defend, because there's nothing. All we're saying is that he made it really clear that he didn't learn his gospel from people. He learned it from God. That was literally the question that Dre asked you. He was like, didn't he? And you were like, did he? Apparently he did.
Well,
like that's it. Like
you seem to be saying that he had a unique message that was.
I don't think I said those words. I don't think I said those words or implied those words. I simply said he got him from God. I'm taking the man at his word.
Okay, Dre, what was that your? I mean, I'm not. I'm just
trying
to understand what you're saying.
I don't have this stuff in front of me. I think in 2 Corinthians he says something along those lines as well. You already know that I think that he had a different gospel, so I don't know why we're gonna have this discussion when it doesn't have to do with the end times.
Well, okay, well,
I mean,
but you tied it to end times. I mean, I'm not trying to fight with you. But
no, I asked and you answered no, which we could have just moved on right from there.
All right.
I didn't even dispute your answer. I was like, okay.
I don't know why you guys are mad at me. Who's mad? Answering your question.
Nobody's mad.
No, I feel attacked.
Well, don't be a bitch.
Stop being wrong.
I'm not. Okay. way ahead of you, man. I beat you there.
Hey, so when my dad's listening, I'm gonna get another text. Why do you guys always beat up on Brian? This is why he's wrong all the time. Anyway, carry on.
You've never caught me being wrong about anything. But
see, Dad, that's why.
I
have about anything.
This is what I have to deal with.
You're so definitive on how wrong we are on every single topic, but that's okay.
But you get okay. One last point on that. He did say in 1 Corinthians 15, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you. Otherwise you believed in vain. For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance. Then he quotes a creed that is not Pauline in language, and then says, whether then it was I or they, this is what we preached, and this is what you believed. And this ties back to his opening passage in 1 Corinthians, where he rebukes them for forming cliques around.
Why is he defending that?
Why is he defending?
Who is challenging his authority, and why does he have to defend it?
And are you talking about 1 Corinthians 15?
Sure, or any Corinthians.
Well, he's not.
It sounds to me like he's pretty defensive. I'm not even saying he's wrong. Well, I'm just saying that somebody is challenging his authority.
But that's not what's happening in that passage.
Okay.
I mean, has his authority been challenged in Corinth? Yeah, sure, definitely. But to check, I mean, if he was appointed by Jesus Christ to be his representative, then it's wrong to undermine his authority. But if you read 1 Corinthians, it starts off with, he rebukes people for forming cliques around which apostle or teacher.
Sure.
And he emphasizes, it doesn't matter. Paul wasn't crucified for you. Don't form a clique around me. He's deliberately denying any special authority. And so, and the whole point of the first couple chapters is, we're all preaching the same thing here. It doesn't matter which of us initiated you. Don't form cliques around that. You're all in Christ. We're all just workmen who are preaching the same gospel. I mean, he's quite emphatic about that. So, but I do think the issues with Luke deserve some, with the differences between Luke 21 and Matthew 24 and Mark 13 deserve some attention. So you guys want to get back to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you familiar with preterism?
I am.
Of what ism?
I forgot what it means, but I am. The minute you explained, I'll be like, yeah, that, and I do know what it is.
Preterism is the belief that these prophecies have already happened, that in some sense Jesus did return in the year
And
70 AD.
that's the whole book.
Oh,
that even
okay.
even Revelation has already happened, and it had to do with like Rome and all that stuff.
Right. And it's
Right.
typically, it's not necessarily, but it's typically associated with post-millennialism. And just to review some basics here about eschatology. There are three main views about eschatology. There's premillennialism, which mean the pre is that Jesus will return prior to the 1,000-year reign that's described in the book of Revelation. Postmillennialism has it that the church is going to establish this kind of golden age of where Christianity holds sway in the world, and then Jesus will return after that. And then there's amillennialism, which has it that the church age, the church itself, is that 1,000-year reign. Of course, the 1,000 years is not, that's literal. That's just kind of ancient idiom
for a long ass time,
a really long time, right? So
right.
It's not. So that part isn't. Nobody thinks that part is literal, but
wait, no one.
The 1,000-year, the exact.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to
number.
be funny. There's really nobody that actually thinks it's literal.
I mean,
1,000 years.
Probably, you could probably find a guy if you looked for him, but
I bet
by
I know a
and
guy.
large,
there's lots of guys. There's the YECs.
That's what I was getting at. Aren't the YECs going to take that literally?
Super literal.
I've never met anybody who picked that as a hill to die on. Most camps on eschatology, nobody really makes a point that it's going to be exactly 999 years, 364 days, and 23 hours and 59 minutes, and then it's over. Satan gets released from the abyss. The debate is always about whether there is a literal visible reign of Christ on earth, or whether that's figurative language for the church age or some golden age of Christianity.
So you're telling me that there are people that believe that the earth was made in 6 days, but don't take it literally that Satan will be released in 1,000 years?
Well, they might. I mean, I'm not saying absolutely no one does. But,
I think there's plenty.
But my point is that of all the things the different camps of eschatology fight over, that
doesn't even make the discussion.
Right.
They're arguing over so much more stuff that no one's even got to that.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
I've
you
never
could probably
thought
find
about
a guy.
I even had the thought that, to Dre, where you went with the young versus old Earth, that if the 6 days turned into a couple billion years, how many years does a millennium turn into?
We shouldn't worry about it.
Right.
It's not us. That's what it is.
Like, is the end of the world going to be like the sun dwarfing and turning into a black hole or something, instead of like, stuff that's man-made? And by the way, wouldn't that be a kick in the pants?
Wait, say that again.
If the 6 days in Genesis
really
was, hundreds of millions, billions of years, right?
Right. So the millennial kingdom's a really long time. What was
then
the thing you said?
If you extrapolate that, 6 days took a billion years to occur, what does the math turn into for a millennia to actually require in human days? And my point is, at that point, like, we'd be talking about like the sun dwarfing and collapsing on itself and all that kind of stuff. And that the end times could actually be, when it says the sun goes dark, maybe it goes dark because it goes out, because it runs out of fuel and collapses on itself. In which case it would be wild if the end times were heralded by astrophysiological events, not man-made events. That's all my point was, everybody's so focused on like, we're going to cause it and hit this and that's going to cause it. And it's like, nah, the sun's actually going to like run out of gas before then. It's just an interesting thought.
So don't be a dick. Just live.
I haven't met anyone who has that view, but there's probably somebody whose wheels are
I
spinning
invented
now.
it on the fly. Like, I mean, so I don't know if anybody does.
You just accidentally started a cult.
I now subscribe to that. That's my view. That's my view. So
the super long millennia.
So is Jesus coming back? Not anytime soon. I'll tell you that.
It's gonna be a minute.
That's only if you're a post-millennialist.
Right.
Post-millennialist.
And not a preterist.
Well, no, a preterist. Preterism is usually post-millennialism. See, the preterists kind of they deal with Luke 21 by claiming that
all of it was about the temple.
Like it's not a distinction between two events. They're the same event, but the coming of the Son of Man was invisible, and it was setting up the church age, which they believe officially commenced with the destruction of the temple.
By the way, I just did a quick check. I know people that think that 1,000 years is literal. I just got this confirmation in real time, just so you know.
Okay.
I think Jehovah's Witnesses do.
That would make sense if they think the 2041 is literal. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Right. I know you're in the middle of a thought. I'm sorry.
It's
so does Luke 21 lend credence to the modern day memes in your feed that says the end times are coming?
I don't think so.
With this World War III on the cusp.
I think partial preterism has some merit to it, which has it that there's some stuff that needs to be understood from the Old Testament. Like first off, I think it's worth asking, well, why did he feel the need to disabuse them of this idea that the fall of the temple would coincide with his advent?
Mm-hmm.
The Olivet Discourse is packed with references to the Old Testament. One of the obvious ones is where he quotes Joel, where Joel predicts that he foresees the day of the Lord, which will entail the punishment of the nations that rallied against Israel and Judah, and he restores the fortunes of Judah and establishes God's kingdom on earth. Another one is Zechariah 12-14, which describes armies gathered against Jerusalem to destroy it. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah. He directly he uses that exact language in the Olivet Discourse. You will see armies gathered against Israel, you'll see armies surrounding Jerusalem, and that language is right there in Zechariah, which Zechariah also talks about how Yahweh himself will descend from heaven and strike down the nations, and it says that his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, and this is the precursor to a visible reign of God on earth and the beginning of God's kingdom on earth. But it kind of describes conditions that are associated with the millennial reign, where he's ruling from Jerusalem, and there are punishments against nations that don't obey, and blessings and prosperity and protection for nations that do. So there's still sin in the world. He's arbitrating between nations, but it's God himself visibly present on earth, ruling from Jerusalem. This is like a major messianic prophecy. And so that's why Jesus was disabusing them of this idea that when the Romans are surrounding Jerusalem to destroy it, people reading Zechariah would naturally think, well, any moment now the Messiah is going to arrive and save us, when Jesus is telling them, no, you're basically you've rejected the Messiah, so the city's going to be destroyed and the time of the Gentiles will commence. So, which of course raises the question, does that mean the prophecy of Zechariah failed? Was that a false prophecy? Well, no. There's a recurring principle that it bears some examination. There's often in prophecy, there is a immediate versus an ultimate fulfillment. Like prophecies often have multiple waves of meaning, and the prototype for this would be in 2 Samuel chapter 7, I think. Let me check. 2 Samuel 7, and it's kind of repeated in a sort of more streamlined positive form in 1 Chronicles 17. David wants to build the temple, and he talks to the prophet Nathan about this, and Nathan tells him, yeah, go for it, good idea. But then Nathan gets an oracle from God telling him, go and tell my servant David, it's not for you to build my house. All the time I wandered in, all the time you've been settled in the land, and never did I tell any of the judges who I raised up to shepherd my people to build me a house of cedar. Rather, I will build you a house, i.e. a dynasty, and a son from after you've laid down with your ancestors, a son from your own body will be the one to build the house for me, and I will establish his kingdom forever. And there's a bunch of, it's better if I just look at this instead of there's key stuff I'm leaving out that kind of illustrates it for me. Sorry, I should have had this up. I'm very unprofessional. Okay, so he tells him, now I will make your name great like the names of the greatest men on earth, and I will provide a place for my people Israel and plant them so that they can have a home for their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders of my people Israel. The Lord declares that the Lord himself will establish a house for you, i.e. a dynasty. I will raise up your son to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name. Sorry, my computer keeps, I keep getting pop-ups that are blocking the text. It's not my fault.
Spoken like a true zillennial. Nothing's your fault.
Okay. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father. He will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. So, and this is like the prototypical prophecy about the Messiah. Like, it has all of these elements about Israel never again being troubled by wicked people, God establishing them in safety and providing for them, the son of David who will reign forever and build his temple. So there's this, in the immediate sense, this was fulfilled by Solomon, who was his direct successor, and he built the temple. But clearly he didn't establish this permanent, his throne didn't last forever. He didn't establish this permanent safety and security and prosperity for Israel. They were beset by invasion, and eventually they kept breaking the covenant and eventually exiled. And that's why Jews expected a capital M Messiah, like the son of David, who will establish God's kingdom forever. In Chronicles, you have kind of the same prophecy, but they take out all the stuff about if he's I will punish him for his wrongdoing. And so this version of the messianic, of the prophecy about the Messiah, it presents a more perfected figure who won't have any wrongdoing to punish. But it's kind of Chronicles is itself sort of a messianic prophecy, because the whole point is to look back on the dynasty of David as this kind of golden age, as the blueprint for what the Messiah will do. And that prophecy is kind of the central part of it. And so, the point of all that is that you do have the prophecy isn't about giving specific signs to look for so that you can thereby predict the future. It's to establish these types and patterns of God's dealings with Israel and his patterns of history. And these are all kind of a precursor to the final age, that when the Messiah finally comes in real life. And you kind of find the same pattern with regard to exile and return. Like they were conquered by Babylon, the city and the temple destroyed, carried off into exile. 70 years later, they return. And all of the prophecies that you find about that in Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, they kind of talk about it in these eschatological terms. Like the expectation apparently in Daniel's time was that, so Jeremiah predicted in Jeremiah chapter 29, he tells the Jews exiled in Babylon to settle in. Don't listen to the prophets who lie to you and tell you you're going back soon. Build houses, plant vineyards, marry and give your sons and daughters in marriage, pray for the welfare of the city you live in, because you're in for the long haul. That's your home now. After 70 years are completed, then I will come to you and bring you back to the land I promised your ancestors. And so apparently they believed that the Messiah would do that, because when the 70 years is over in Daniel 9, when he's praying about he knows the time is up, and so he's praying that God would fulfill his promise to bring them back. And he doesn't explicitly say, send us the Messiah, but when the angel Gabriel comes to him and he gives him his answer, he tells him, know and understand this, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to seal up vision and prophecy, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to anoint the most holy. So rather than the 70 years you're expecting, it's going to be 70 times 7 years before the Messiah comes. And then he gives him kind of a breakdown of the 490 years between when that countdown begins and when the Messiah arrives. And you find kind of the same language in the Olivet Discourse about the abomination of desolation. But the point is, like, you have these repeating patterns in prophecy that they have their immediate fulfillment, and then they have their ultimate fulfillment in the future when everything is consummated. And it's kind of on these repeating cycles. So when Luke predicts when he conflates the return of Jesus with the destruction of the temple, it kind of fits in that same pattern. Like, it's not exactly fulfilled in the year 70, but it's a precursor to what it will be like when the Messiah returns. So did that clear all up for you guys?
No.
You let me talk for a long time, and it
So does the sign of today fulfill any immediate prophecy?
I think the fact that Israel is a nation again, I wouldn't say the events of the recent weeks have any particular prophetic significance, but the fact that Israel became a nation again, like I talked about those patterns that you see in the Bible, like whenever you see like the number 40, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years. Elijah was hunted by Ahab and Jezebel for 40 days and 40 nights after his showdown with the prophets of Baal. So the number 40 that has significance for that's the time of a generation. It's the number of judgment. 40 years after Jesus was crucified, the temple was destroyed.
So will there be another iteration of Israel? Will it fall again?
That's the thing that I always think about, because there's like two thoughts I have. One is, if Israel would rebuild the temple again and put us into a third temple era, then all of these things could or couldn't be different. And it's almost like they don't build another temple because they don't want it all being tied back together, right?
The pattern that we just
Right.
got finished,
Yeah,
displaying.
Yeah, because I mean, what happens if, maybe Hamas wins and Israel ceases to exist? Well, then what do we do? What do we do with all of this eschatology, right? Because now it's like, well, that's being surrounded, happened, whatever, all that stuff. And then it's like, well, now was that prophecy, or did it already happen? Or was that prophecy about this moment? But now we're in some, gap between all of the other,
right.
the period in between this.
Will
and
the
that.
United States turn on Israel and
Right.
be part of that fall?
Or are we going to be part of the bad guys?
I think the takeaway
are we the new Babylon?
Actually, I want to answer
Rome?
that.
Right.
I do want to answer that. But the takeaway here is that the prophecy is not there so we can read headlines and make predictions of the future.
Right.
Prophecy is there to assure us that this will happen, that we're in a plan, that God has a plan for history. And this ties back into the divine council worldview. The bottom line that I think we need to keep emphasizing, the takeaway from the divine council worldview, is that we are at war with dark forces. We're in a struggle for the fate of humanity with the spiritual forces of darkness in the heavenly realms. Their sentence has been decreed. They know they're going to lose. Their goal right now is to keep extending the clock. And this gospel of the kingdom must be preached to all nations, and then the end will come. It doesn't, I think there is prophetic significance for the nation of Israel coming back into existence. But you can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow based on that. But what we can do, we can take active steps to bring about the conclusion of the stage of history by preaching this gospel of the kingdom to all nations. And that doesn't just mean standing on a sidewalk spouting scripture. We have to live it out. It's about, we have to participate in the divine nature. We have to make every effort to add to our faith excellence, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness, love. We have to cultivate the divine nature within, mentor other people. That's what the church is supposed to be doing. And that's how God's kingdom on earth spreads, and it's preached to all nations. And as long as we're not doing that, the clock keeps extending.
Right. And I wasn't trying to make predictions. There's just patterns, and there's also these forces of darkness that you talk about. And who knows that those forces of darkness could, at this point in time, have an edge. They could be winning. It doesn't mean they're gonna win. Yeah. It's just they're ahead, right?
Yeah, so there's ebbs and flows.
Is the shining kingdom on the hill called the United States, are they going to turn into the force of darkness? Don't know. I'm not trying to predict it. I'm just saying that there's things that we may have to look out for.
This won't make me popular, but
because you're worried about being popular your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the great beast, the great red dragon in the book of Revelation, obviously it's Satan, but it's described in terms used by the prophet Daniel for the four beasts that represent the four empires of Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. So it's basically a revived Roman Empire that's in power, that the Antichrist is the head of. If there's a revived Rome never really fell as an empire. It fell as a city, but it just kind of like broke up and into lots of little empires. That's why you have German rulers who are called Kaisers and Russians czars. And it just kind of changed hands over the centuries until we took up the mantle. I think we're the revived Roman Empire. And Daniel talks about the fourth beast. Is it? But
too stinking sweet.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the the role we would occupy if that is us.
I mean, you could make a secondary unpopular statement that the Roman Empire never went anywhere, and oh, by the way, that's where the Catholic Church is.
I mean, Martin Luther argued that was the Babylon, the mother of horrors,
right?
And
strong take.
But what about China? They're a red dragon,
literally, right? Like they're communist and they're all about dragons.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, there are there are clues that, well, he describes it as he uses the metaphors of four beasts, but he also uses the illustration of an image of, it's got a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, and feet of iron and baked clay. And that represents the same four empires that the beasts represent. And he makes a point about how the feet are of iron and mixed and clay, meaning it's partly strong and partly brittle because it's made up of a mixture of peoples.
Ooh, America.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. But again, I don't know. It's speculative, and it could be.
So what you're saying is we have the end times coming, and we need to get your Patriot supply for food.
Start prepping.
Buy your guns while you can, while the Second Amendment is still a thing.
This episode brought to you by preppers.com.
Boogaloo.
Now, anybody selling
I'm first one dead.
food,
I'm in
the first one's free, but we're going to want to get paid after this. But yeah, but there's also, I don't know how much more of this we want to get into, but I think the takeaway is, if anybody thinks they see signs that the end is coming, they're wrong.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
But
and don't listen to anyone that says they do.
There's a whole other thing we could get into with Ezekiel 36 through 48, but I don't know how much energy we got. People like to look to that one because it predicts the another attack by Gog and Magog against Israel, and everybody has ideas about who Gog and Magog are. There are clues in the text, but it's pretty inconclusive. And again, if you think you see headlines that align with prophecy that tell you the end is coming, you don't. But
I think it's pretty clear. I think Matthew lays it out pretty clear. Says, yeah, there's signs that these things happen, but end times, I don't know. The sun doesn't know.
The sun doesn't know.
That's a pretty powerful statement right there.
That blows me away.
Jesus de Cristo doesn't know.
So you're trying to tell me Jesus Christ doesn't know when he's coming back?
Oh. You put snot on the ball?
What?
We're referencing a movie called Major League.
Oh,
and there's a great sequence.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. I like him very much, but he no help with curveball.
And then the old white guy goes, "You trying to tell me Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?" It's a great sequence.
That's the one with Charlie Sheen.
Yes.
Look at you with the big sports ball knowledge, Brian.
Yeah, I like sports movies.
I mean, Major League's a great one as sports movies go.
It's a good crossover movie too, because it's funny whether you know about baseball or not.
Yeah,
because it's just dudes being dickheads in the locker room, right?
I play Little League as a kid. I'm not totally.
I mean, you're American and you're Gen X, so of course you played Little League as a kid. That's what all little boys did.
I hated it. Hated every second of it.
And many of them hated it as well. It's probably because you weren't good.
Well,
when you're good at something, sometimes you don't hate it.
See, I'm nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other, so I had no depth perception. Yeah, and the optometrist told
you're allowed to drive cars.
I use my other senses.
You go Daredevil mode.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you fucking Matt Murdock, the driver over
Plus,
here.
I have glasses, but
like, I don't need you to say you're Batman ever again. You are Daredevil.
Right.
But the optometrist told my dad that it's fine. It'll even out as he gets older, which it didn't. But my dad still insisted that I play like. But this was that I think he took me to the optometrist after years of baseball, and I could not hit the ball to save my life.
He had to come up with a reason. Like, there's no way my son sucks this bad. There better be a reason.
What happens is one eye goes this way, the other eye goes that way.
There was shame. Like, I could not catch the ball to save my life. If I did what I was told to do, it hit me in the head every time.
Yeah.
I could not hit the ball.
That sounds awful.
But what I could do was, I was a really small kid.
You could crouch down and walk.
I could get a really small strike zone, and I'd always pick out a helmet that was like a size or two too big. And so I had such a small strike zone.
You look like Rick Moranis in his lightsaber.
Well,
your Schwartz is as big as mine.
What I figured out how to do was, I was such a small kid that I could kind of put my head in the way of the ball, and it would knock the helmet off, and it looked spectacularly violent and injurious, but I was fine. I just kind of rolled with it.
I'm thinking you were fine. I think you had some TBI going on. That's probably your combative nature today.
So anyway, that pitcher, so I'd get walked, and that pitcher was worthless for the rest of the game because he didn't want to hit another kid in the head.
Yeah, you gave him PTSD.
So I had
another kid who would have been a great pitcher quit the sport because of you and your shenanigans.
Well, I was using the gifts that I had
I'm not mad at you.
to help my team.
And now he's some lawyer that helps people get paid when they get burned with coffee at McDonald's. Thanks, Brian. We this litigious nature we have as a country.
And his name.
Hey man, you can
Larry
blame
Parker.
my optometrist. I could have been. I would have been great if I'd had.
Larry H. Parker got me $2.1 million, even though it's only a headshot and I can't walk ever again.
That's like that story. I was listening to who was that dude on MTV? One of those MTV music guys. Towards the end, one of the more popular ones. He's a radio DJ, whatever. I can't remember his name.
Colin Quinn.
After that, like a decade younger. Like he was one of the last ones.
I think the last time I watched MTV was in 1993.
Was it Cortez MTV Sports?
No, it was. But anyway, so the dude was talking about how he played golf and he was a really good golfer, and he played in college or high school or no college. He played in college, high school. Maybe it was high school. It was a senior in high school. That's what it was. And as he was going into the state championship, and he got smoked out. And he got beat so badly, he was like, dude, I clearly don't have what it takes to be a pro golfer, because this guy beat me so badly. Like, I got no business being a golfer. But the kid that beat him, his name was Tiger Woods. And so he was like, I didn't realize that, it's okay to get beat really badly by Tiger Woods, because everybody got beat really badly by Tiger Woods. He's like, so I just went into, he went on to be a VJ and whatever. And it was a great story, but it was one of those things you don't know, you don't know how, you don't have that perspective until it's too late. I'll try to.
There's lots of good college stories about Tiger Woods, and like him being
Carson
in class.
Daly.
Carson Daly, yeah.
That was going to be my next guess.
Yeah, it was Carson Daly.
That's one of those. Oh yeah, all right, that's right. Wasn't Daisy Fuentes?
Yep,
I remember her. Yeah,
I bet you do.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
So we're not in end times. That's what, Brian. I thought you were going to convince us that we were.
I don't know that we're
we
not.
Had to go. We start prepping, and that
I don't.
I want to suit back up and go getting World War III.
Well, hold on. Let me correct you here.
Okay.
We could be in the end times, but if we are, and people are saying that we are, they're only right by accident.
Right. It's just because if you say it enough, eventually you're going to be right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rain dance. Like it is going to happen, but you're dancing. Well,
it depends on how many children you sacrifice before the rain dance. So it didn't work.
That?
We need more kids.
Did they do
more
that?
Sacrificial stuff and things? Go.
I mean, I don't
attack
know.
that village.
I'm not familiar with child sacrificing.
To be fair, are you talking about Baal worship or Native Americans?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Oh, good question.
Huh.
That was a spicy statement.
It was.
We just lost 4 listeners.
Yeah,
we just lost all of our indigenous American listeners off that.
Did they worship their storm god the way that they? I need to look into that.
I don't know. Let's read the.
By the way,
diaries of Cortez.
As we're throwing back things, Brian, the etymology of eschatology is from the Greek eschatos, which means last.
Last, right? I haven't been able to find. Well, yeah, I looked up I looked that up and I found the etymology of scatology, and it's in a
not the same thing. Yeah, that's that has to do with your cat off screen.
Is that
I don't have
Scatman Struthers?
Matt, I don't have a cat
singing. Oh,
okay, Brian. Your skinwalker, the skinwalker that lives in your house.
A cat is a girly pet for girly people. I'm a manly man's man, and I would not have a pet cat.
Do you have a dog?
No, I have a lion. I have a mini lion. She is a mighty huntress.
You and Mike Tyson.
And a fearsome apex predator.
No, Mike Tyson actually had tigers.
Tigers. Yeah, I have a lion, Trey. She is a mighty huntress. I call her Princess Cuddleface. She's so cute.
Because that's a seriously strong name for a huntress. Well, Princess Cuddleface.
I'll tell her to you.
So I'm disappointed that you can't even tell me when end time starts, and I'm disappointed that the memes could be right, but they're not necessarily right, and
they're only right by mistake.
Yeah.
The good news, though, is that we can hasten it by preaching this gospel of the kingdom to all nations.
Because I'm not a person that's afraid of apocalypse.
I'm not a big hastener, though.
Right.
It's kind of our job as Christians, though. That's what
I know, and I'm really bad at it.
Right. Look, I'm a bad Christian. I'm working on it. I'm growing.
All right. I mean,
it's what we're doing here, though, right?
Right.
This absolves me of having to go knock on doors.
Yeah, I don't think preaching the gospel of the kingdom means that. I kind of see the church as the mission field at this point, because we don't even know what the gospel of the kingdom is, and so
that's a whole nother episode.
If we could, it's kind of every episode, though.
Well,
if we're
I realize I sound like a broken record, but
you do.
That's the song we need to hear. So
let me play you the song of my people. You don't even know what the gospel is. For those that can't see, Dre is rocking devil horns to go along with my 80s rock version of what Brian just said.
And I'm just an innocent bystander.
You started it.
I did. Yeah.
So if you paid attention all the way up to this point, thank you.
Right.
And with that, I will say, stay enlightened, stay curious, and we'll see you next week. If we're not gone from the apocalypse.